So after 70 years of Babylonian captivity, during which time there was no place of sacrifice for Israel, the Jews were finally permitted to return to the land and rebuild the temple. Now, understanding that there was no way during those 70 years of Babylonian captivity to approach God. Without an altar, without the shedding of blood, there was no remission for sin. Leviticus 17:11, for the life of a thing is in the blood, and the blood for making atonement. So it's like Adam and Eve walking around naked, clothed with their own garments. It was because God provided a garment to cover their sin that he could be in continuing relationship with them. While they were in their own homemade garments, man-made garments, he couldn't look upon their sin. And so when there was no place to make a sacrifice, there was no place to make atonement. This is the same argument I have today. The altar has been destroyed. And so where does Israel make atonement for their sin? And so they've introduced the concept of tikkun olam, which is repairing the world, preparing the world so that when Messiah comes, they'll be ready to receive him. And they feel like that's a moral duty on their behalf. When you ask them about how do they approach God, how do they make atonement when there is no altar, you'll get a lot of very convoluted answers. I got those answers, well, you need to go to yeshiva. And I said, well, I did. And they said, well, that's reserved for advanced study. I said, I went to advanced study. I said, I still have the question. They said, well, then you fully don't understand the Talmudic teachings. And I said, well, no, I understand the biblical teachings. I don't need to understand the Talmudic teachings, but I was raised in the Talmud. So it's an argument. It's an ongoing argument. It's something that man justifies, the same way man justifies watering down the gospel, the same way man justifies not talking about in sermons about hell or about sin and talking about anecdotal references and life application when it's more informational than transformational. And so that's the burden on the church for being concerned about filling the pews.